The presenter is Reverend Peter Lee, ordained minister of the Presbyterian Church USA. Reverend Lee has been working with Operation Mobilization, and he's going to focus on hybridizing mission. He's going to focus on the cultural differences and the leadership theory that will make it possible. He has put down what he has tried to practice as 10 years leading a multicultural team in North Africa. Right now, he's a PhD student at Trinity Evangelical Divinity School in Deerfield, Illinois. He is actually, in many ways, polishing and filling the gaps that he has learned, and many things he can write from his own experience. So I read his paper, and I want to tell you, very, very significant in the concept of hybridity if we are going to move for the mission of God. Reverend Peter Lee.
It's very humbling to follow all these excellent presentations that we've seen and heard in the past 3 days by these fine missiologists. And it's very humbling to speak about leadership to so many international missions leaders here. So with fear and trembling, I will share what I've learned and what I've reflected upon my own experiences in mission today. So the title of my presentation is Hybridizing Mission Toward a Third Space Leadership Perspective in Missions. I decided to be a little clever and came up with this title. By the way, I have rearranged the content of the initial draft of my essay, so I'm not going to be following exactly what you have in the booklet, so bear with me. But a lot of the content will still be here, but I had to cut out quite a bit because of the time limitation. And according to the schedule, my presentation is already over. So I will give you some background information on the topic first, and then I'm going to briefly go over the topic of globalization of missions, and then share 3 related ideas for a multi-ethnic leadership perspective that I believe we need in missions today. So first, background. As we know, hybridity as a concept of mixing and in-betweenness of cultures has been a prominent topic in post-colonial studies for 3 decades. But how does it relate to multi-ethnic leadership in mission? This is the question I try to address in this presentation. We are currently at the forefront of exploring the hybridity concept in mission studies. It would be prudent to approach this new way of missions thinking with caution and a careful theoretical grounding. According to cultural theorist Ian Eng, cultural hybridity is a heuristic device. It enables us to learn. Argentinian anthropologist Nestor Garcia Canclini says that hybridity is an analytical tool that has a potential to interpret various cultural processes. If so, the hybridity concept may be able to help us analyze our current rendering of multi-ethnic leadership in Christian mission today. And I argue that the hybridity concept reveals that the widespread model of cross-cultural leadership in mission needs a heavy revision. This essay is not a discussion on practical how-tos of multi-ethnic leadership style. What I share today is more about revisiting the underlying cultural framework used for multi-ethnic mission leadership and teamwork. So I believe that reframing the existing missions paradigm is going to be where the hybridity concept will be found most useful as an analytical tool. So let me talk a little bit about the globalization of missions. So the last half century of accelerated globalization has significantly altered social structures and cultures around the globe. Local contexts that have traditionally been viewed as more stable and homogeneous are going through rapid changes due to increasing migration up and contacts with people from other cultures. Jan Niederfien Peters, a social scientist with a background in anthropology, argues that globalization is hybridization. It is hybridizing all cultures at an unprecedented rate. Not surprisingly, these changes have implications for multi-ethnic mission leadership. And I note two of these implications here. First, due to international migration and emergence of diaspora communities around the world, the story of mission from everywhere to everywhere has a new twist. Mission is increasingly from everywhere to everywhere, through everywhere. For example, about a year ago, I took a group of Korean American teenagers on a short-term mission trip to Western Europe. And there was a teenager from Germany who joined us on this outreach. And during our trip, his father came to visit him. And the teenager's father happened to be a Nigerian, pastoring a Russian-speaking church in Germany. And his mother, a Russian, Ukrainian, Uzbek, German. When I found out he was a pastor, I did what many good Korean Christians would do. I asked him to bless and pray for my group. Then, somewhat embarrassingly, he said to me, "It's been so long since I prayed in English. May I pray for you in Russian?" So here he was, a Nigerian, married to a Russian, Ukrainian, Uzbek, German, praying in the Russian language for a group of 30 Korean Americans doing short-term mission in the Netherlands. What's significant about this experience is that it's not that significant anymore. This has become a common experience around the world. Mission is increasingly from everywhere to everywhere, through everywhere. It is the through that needs careful attention from us today, more than ever before. The second implication of globalization of missions is the existence and proliferation of culturally diverse missionary groups around the world, including my own, Operation Mobilization. Those who serve on multi-ethnic, multicultural mission teams deal with unique challenges coming from the globalizing nature of mission. Many of these organizations have a worldwide presence. While these workers live and serve in one country, they maintain social ties with their sending country or sending countries. They make cultural adjustments to the context of their local ministry and at the same time adapt to their team's hybridizing culture. Without realizing, they become a sort of religious transnational migrants who already live at intersections of multiple cultural flows. In these settings and for these people, the hybridity concept may not only be useful, but also necessary. So cultural hybridity as a multi-ethnic leadership framework. Then how might we use this concept of cultural hybridity to frame multi-ethnic leadership in mission? As I was researching materials and reflecting upon my own mission experiences, I found three converging themes. The first theme is a third space perspective by Homi Bhabha. The third space represents the space across and between cultural boundaries. Baba hints that this is where culture is really located. This is where the most salient form of cultural production takes place. Baba calls it that alien territory in which there is both a risk of further friction and a potential of overcoming cultural conflicts. This notion of a third space problematizes borders and boundaries. It blurs the boundaries that are historically and culturally constructed in people's consciousness. Seeing the world through the lens of hybridity makes it possible for us to see people as going through continual changes and incorporating new cultural elements. In globalizing missionary communities, this is an important perspective to maintain. We may come from different walks of life, different countries, different cultures, different races and ethnicities, but as we recognize and admit our complicated entanglement with one another, we can more readily commit to living out togetherness in difference. It means that we embrace ongoing changes in and around us. Viewed in this way, stereotypes and ethnic lines are reduced or even removed in their entirety. Once culture or nationality no longer matters so much, when a multi-ethnic mission team enters a liminal space between cultures, common missional commitments and shared life experiences take on far more importance than one's ethnicity or culture. Then the multi-ethnic team is the third space in which a marvelous new culture is created. The visions of Revelation 7 and Isaiah 60 are, at least in part, fulfilled. This is the kind of multi-ethnic perspective needed for missionary leadership today. The question for leaders may be how to be intentional about opening up this third space in mission and how to recognize the third space which organically opens up all around us. The second emergent theme that can help us reframe multi-ethnic mission leadership is a theology of marginality. It was developed by a Korean-American theologian, Jung Lee, who passed away in 1996 at the age of 61. Homi Bhabha's claims of hybridity and third space are quintessentially post-colonial, but somehow they're surprisingly reminiscent of Jung Lee's theological reflections of marginality. Lee provides a non-centralist theology from the margin. He sees marginality as, I quote, deeply rooted in the life and mission of a marginal Jew, Jesus of Nazareth, who is known to marginal people as the margin of marginality, and I unquote. Lee's thesis, closely aligning with Bhabha's notion of hybridity as a subaltern agency, suggests how intentional marginality needs to be included in discussions of leadership in global mission. Hybridity entails marginality, which is a basis for agency. Migrant people, diaspora communities, and missionaries often experience marginalization. And there's a great deal of humiliation and pain involved in migration. But the pains of marginality have a potential for agency, which cannot be experienced by those who are at the center of power and privilege. This is a point that needs to be further explored in Christian mission leadership today. The third theme that can help us reframe mission leadership is global concepts of culture by the Roman Catholic mission scholar Robert Schreider. Currently, the dominant model of culture found in popular missions texts is what Schreider calls integrated concepts of culture, also referred to as the system view of culture by cultural psychologists, and also referred to as the standard missiological model by Michael Rinkovich. This view is widely spread in multicultural team and leadership literature and missions literature. And it tries to measure and compare thematic categories such as dimensions of national cultures. While there's some truth to this way of describing cultures, it is problematic due to its essentializing view of culture and people. A leadership framework that utilizes an integrated model is inadequate for a globalizing world and hybridizing mission. Several contemporary missiologists, most notably Michael Rinkovich, has challenged the integrated model. Leadership in Christian mission needs to be grounded in a culture model which incorporates the reality of globalization and cultural hybridization. And Schreider calls such a model globalized concepts of culture. And I don't have time to explain all the details, and I have some more details in the paper in your booklet. So in closing, let me give you a story. Some years ago, I had a revealing conversation with a veteran missionary from Hong Kong. And while discussing cultural differences between non-Westerners and Westerners and ways for us to work together, she said this to me. She said, "Westerners just don't get it. They just don't get it. So it's up to us non-Westerners to try to understand them and help them and let them do whatever they want to do in their way. This is really the best way." I still remember the tone of her voice and the facial expressions of her. While this missionary's frustration and her personal resolution is understandable, there has to be a way for us to live together in difference. We need to allow more room for probing complex and sometimes controversial historical entanglements in Christian mission. We cannot reduce the reality and resort to incomplete solutions or easy bailout by settling for a one-sided deferment or superficial unity in diversity. We would do well to reject all too easy meta-narratives and grand mission strategies. Instead, we need to embrace realities of a globalizing, hybridizing world and strive to allow the marginalized to speak in Christian mission. As Baba points out, the significance of hybridity is found only and only in a marginalized position that renounces any claim of power, any claim to power or privilege. This point is beautifully expressed in Jung-Young Lee's concluding remarks in his reflection of marginality. Lee writes, "The ultimate victory of suffering love transforms central group people to marginal, and marginal people to new marginal people. So all become marginal people of God. When all are marginal, all become servants to one another in Jesus Christ, who is the servant of all servants. By becoming servants to one another, tears of sorrow change to tears of joy. An in-between is transformed into an in-both." Notice this language of hybridity here. In-between is transformed into an in-both. And suffering is overcome in the fellowship of suffering. When all become servants to one another, the dualistic, exclusive, and dominant ideology of centrality is overcome. And I contend that this may be the missiological framework required of Christian leaders in an era of globalization and hybridization today.